Paolo in DC has a view on God's existence, which I think we can kind of handle pretty quickly. Welcome, Paolo. You're on with Seth and Matt. How can we help?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Exhausted. How are you?
Yes. I've been listening to the show, and now I have lots of extra questions in my mind. But basically, what I wanted to bring up, I was born and raised as Catholic, but I went exploring different areas of religion. But anyway, I think it would be very important. Oh, first of all, I want to say that I just found the Atheist Experience just recently. I think it is an amazing enterprise because you really talk about God. I mean, you really, in one way, we are all really searching for God just by asking for a proof of God's existence. Anyway, so my compliments to your work.
Thank you.
What I want to bring up is that going back to the beginning, right, the creation of the universe, it is interesting, not just as a mental exercise, but also really as a tool to try to figure out if God really exists or not. Let's assume that God exists and that He created the universe. Then the question is, why did He do it? Why?
No. See, Paolo, I can't begin with, let's assume God created the universe and then ask why He did it. You don't just get to assume the very thing we're addressing here. And so what reason do we have to think there's a God?
Well, I think just the fact that we are spending like 3 hours every week arguing about the existence of God. I mean, we must assume something. Otherwise, what is the point of arguing about the existence of God if we just assume that God does not exist? What's the point?
No, Paolo. The point of having these discussions is because there are a bunch of people who believe and there are a bunch of people who don't believe. And the people who believe have a burden of proof. And so we'd like to get them to meet that. Both Seth and I used to believe, and now we don't, because we realized that we did not have a good reason to believe.
I understand, yeah.
So what reason should we believe?
Well, in my first statement, I just say that I found the existence of God as self-evident, just because. Okay,
well, that's just not true. That's just not true because, I mean, it seems evident to you, but it's not evident to us. So the fact that something's evident to you, how do you know that what you think is self-evident is actually true?
No, I'm not saying that it is a proof that can be proved to somebody who does not believe in God.
So that's not what I asked.
Okay, what did you ask? Please repeat.
So, if something appears to be self-evident to you, how can you tell whether or not it's actually true? Is it possible, for example, let me answer this question differently. Is it possible that you could think something was self-evidently true, but you could be wrong?
Yes, it is possible.
Okay, then the next question is, do you care whether or not something is true?
Yes, I care very much to find out.
So if God is, if you think that God is self-evident, then how can you tell whether or not you're correct?
I cannot at this time.
If you can't tell, then why would you believe? If you say you care about whether or not it's true, how can you believe something if there's no way to verify it?
Well, I can choose to believe, or I can just choose not to believe.
It's not just to choose to believe. No, Paolo. No. First of all, belief is not a choice. But what we just addressed was, you said you care whether or not your belief is true, but you have no way of testing it. How many other things do you believe that you cannot verify?
Well, I have no way of testing it, but that does not stop me for keep trying to find out if
Sure.
God really exists.
Paolo, I am in no way discouraging you. I am in no way discouraging you from trying to find out if one exists. You can try to find out if a God exists for the rest of your life, but the time to believe it is after you've found out, not just while you're trying to find out. For example, if we were trying to find out if there was a connection between smoking cigarettes and cancer, the time to believe that there's a connection is when we actually find the evidence for that, and not a moment before. As it turns out, there is a connection between smoking cigarettes and cancer. We know that from the evidence. If you're going to say that you believe that there's a God, that is the same as saying you believe that smoking causes cancer or contributes to cancer, and you're doing it while saying, I don't have the evidence, I'm still looking for it. So now you're saying you believe something, even though you have not yet reached the point where you have sufficient evidence to believe it.
I understand. Can I change my statement then?
Sure.
What I'm saying is that I'm not sure if I believe in the existence of God. Is that okay?
So you don't know whether or not you believe in a God. If you don't, you think that if you did believe in a God, you would know it?
Well, let's just say that I'm not sure that God exists, and there is no way for me to prove it.
I'm not asking.
I'll take that. Look,
I'm not asking about sure. That's fine. I'm just saying when you say you're not sure if you believe or not, I would argue that if you believed in a God, you'd kind of know it. But yeah, I'm fine with you saying you don't know whether God exists or not.
If I can jump in, there's one other thing that I heard at the beginning of your call, and I want to make sure that I'm tracking. I sense from you, and I hear a variation off this, for someone who doesn't believe in God, you sure talk about him an awful lot, meaning that it's kind of a self-conscious response. Maybe we do secretly believe. I hear from you that, hey, if there isn't a God out there, why is humankind so obsessed with these conversations relating to the God questions? Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
In other words, do you think our interest in the God questions kind of leans into this innate desire of human beings to believe in a higher power?
Well, it is possible, but you are right, actually. We are all obsessed with the idea of God.
I don't think that's correct. But let me clarify what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is if humankind has throughout our history been interested in the questions, the bigger questions, where did we come from? How did life begin? What is our purpose? That type of thing. These sort of existential questions, which we so often hear throughout the human condition. You think that kind of searching for answers leans into the search for God. Is that accurate? Do I have that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So you feel like because we are so interested in questions about where did we come from, how did the universe begin, et cetera, where do our morals come from, all of these types of things, our interest in that seems to indicate that there must be a God. Otherwise, why would we be so obsessed? Is that right?
No. That is not a proof. It's not a proof of the existence of God. It's just a proof that we are obsessed with this idea of God. Now,
no. I think we are. If I may, I think we are, as part of the human condition. We're obsessed. May not be the word. We're interested, or at least most of us are, in answers. And as Hitch used to say, back in the infancy of our species, our first answers were almost always our worst. People didn't understand germ theory. We didn't understand the cosmos. We didn't know what stars were. We didn't know what caused disease and epilepsy and natural disasters. And so people in their ignorance would reach up and look up to the skies, and they would call down their deities, and they would pray and chant. And these were all human expressions in a search for greater meaning or causes for something. But the more we've come to know about the natural world, the less and less and less we've needed those superstitious answers, those sort of primitive answers rooted in human ignorance. And I don't think that our quest for knowing more tomorrow than we knew today, that having discussions about whether or not someone can prove a God, etc., none of that validates the existence of a God. It simply means we are engaged in the arena of ideas to try to determine what is true, what is real, what is false, what is superstition. Fair enough?
Yeah.
We're interested in finding answers wherever they may be. Some people like to scribble something in a blank, and others, like Matt and me, and hopefully you, are saying, you're probably going to have to demonstrate that before I fill in that blank. Otherwise, the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, but
And if we're all fine with I don't know, I think I kind of got to pause it here, Paolo, because we're almost out of time, and there's one more call that I promised we would get to. But
Probably my fault.
No, it's fine.
On, brother. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I would love for you to call back and talk about this more, Paolo, because I think if we're all in the same boat of saying, hey, I don't know, that should be fine. But my obsession with God, if you want to call it that, has to do with the fact that I was a believer, that I found out I didn't have good reason, and then I find myself in a world full of people who believe. And for 16 years, I've been here asking what's the good reason to believe, and nobody seems to have a good reason. And it puzzles me that people are so eager and willing to believe when they don't really have a good reason. But I got to move on to another caller, Paolo. I'd love for you to call us back and talk another time.
Thank you. Bye.
I think his journey I love the fact that his journey hopefully is about questions. God, keep asking questions. Yep. Keep tapping on the glass, keep kicking the tires, keep being curious. I think there's a lot of utility in that.
There is. And I love the questioning.